Welcome to Flourishing Flame, from burning out to burning bright with therapist and coach Leah Brown. Are you a people helper or caregiver, feeling overwhelmed, distant, cynical, and crispy around the edges? Join me to defeat burnout by learning how to manage stress and create deep connective relationships with others so that you can pursue your calling, providing light and warmth to those around you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 27 of The Flourishing Flame. We've been talking about priorities, and we're going to follow that vein a little further today. I once heard someone say that if you took your receipts and stapled them together, you'd have a little book that told you how you spent your money. Another old adage is, show me your checkbook and I'll tell you your priorities. Many of us don't use checkbooks anymore, but there's a principle here. We prioritize the things we spend money on. Time and money are limited resources that reflect to ourselves and to others what's truly important to us. Time, unlike money, is a defined resource that everyone has the same amount of. No matter your age or background, you can't truly buy more time or even save it up for later. Just like our receipts tell us how we spent our money, we can track our time and create a time audit to see how we spent it. A time audit is created by writing down how you're spending your time. This creates a valuable tool to see where your time is going. You can do this in a few different ways, and there's even multiple things that you can print off the internet that you can keep on a clipboard or keep on a paper in your planner if you use a paper planner, or be able to use on your phone. There's apps to help you track your time. But the idea is that every period of time you stop and write down what you're doing, what you've been doing in that amount of time. One way that I've seen as resources online is, 15-minute increments or 30-minute increments. Or my husband did a really extensive time audit a while ago using 6-minute increments, because if it's every 6 minutes, you don't have to think about very long what you've been doing for the last 6 minutes. Make a quick note and keep going. And we were actually talking about this earlier today, and how for him, being able to track those 6-minute increments, he ended up also going through what he was doing, but he expanded it to paying attention to his motivation level and to his energy level, both his physical energy and also his mental energy. So as you're tracking that and being able to see what you're spending your time with, you're creating a resource for you to look at, kind of like the receipts making a book that you can see what you prioritize with your money. A time audit allows you to see what is taking your time, what you're spending your time on. And this helps us to do a few things. The first is it helps us to identify how we're spending our time. I used to work for a residential facility for kids that needed some extra support, and we worked with kids ages 4 to 14. And in my role, I did individual therapy, group therapy. I had meetings with the kids' provider teams that were at our facility, and meetings with their parents or guardians when they would come to visit. I had clinical team meetings with the other therapists that were on staff, and phone calls and social worker visits. And it was just a lot that was going on all the time. And everything that we did, we needed to document. And I would get to the end of the day, and after all of these different things that were going on, I would still have paperwork to do. My supervisor suggested at that time to use a time audit to track my time. This allowed me to see where I was spending my time. It helped me to identify downtime and places where I'd given myself more cushion than what I needed. It helped me to identify which of my work activities were the most important and needed to be done. We can use some of the technology that's already on our devices to help us with this time audit also. If you have an iPhone, you can go and you can see what have you been doing with your screen time, and it can break it down by which apps you're on. So being able to identify is just the first step. Once we've identified what those things are that we're spending our time on, then we need to be brutally honest with ourselves and acknowledge where this time is going. Not just the activities of the time, but what is getting our best time and what is getting the most of our time. This takes a deep level of honesty to not see the exceptions when there's a clear rule. Catherine was shocked by how much screen time she'd spent on social media, online shopping, and even window shopping. Over 20 hours of her week was spent, and a few minutes here and there, in addition to the time she knew was part of her downtime. Being able to face it and see where her time was going was a major step in her being able to make changes in her life that would allow her to have more access to her better time. As you look at your list, acknowledging how much of your time was spent in each of the 4 quadrants that we've been talking about and priorities is really important. So, just as a review, the activity matrix is made out of 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 are those things that are urgent and important. Those are the things that act on us. Crises, deadline driven activities. Quadrant 2 are important but not urgent. Remember, this is the quadrant of quality. We act on it. These are the things that by doing them, we're preparing and preventing other problems. It helps us to clarify our values, and it's really the relationship building quadrant. Quadrant 3 are the things that are urgent but not important. These are often those things that are the interruptions or the requests from other people. It's the phantom of quadrant 1, where we're often meeting other people's priorities and expectations. It can feel like quadrant 1 because it's so busy, but it really is not our important activities. Quadrant 4 are those things that are not important and not urgent. This tends to be the escape when life is overwhelming. Just like Catherine was using her phone and that screen time as downtime, it was actually time that was being stolen away from her because she wasn't noticing it. We often enter into quadrant 4 activities when we're feeling burnt out from quadrant 1 and quadrant 3 activities. When we're able to look at our activities and be able to see which quadrant they fit in, we can see which are the things that we can just push to the side. And this is where we go from the acknowledging to adapting. Once you are looking at those quadrants and you can see, oh, these are the things that I automatically know I can just cut out. They're stealing my time, but they're not giving me anything back. And once you've done that, then you can go back to your list of the things that you've been doing and kind of group them in ways that are similar. In his book, The One Thing, Gary Keller asks this focusing question: what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? If you apply that question and look at it in light of what's on your list, you might find ways to refine your priorities, to do some things that would be quadrant 2 activities that would allow all of the things that are in that group to be easier or unnecessary. I've done this demonstration before, and I want to explain it to you so that you can see it in your mind's eye. Imagine that you're looking at this tall plastic container. Think like a mason jar type container, but bigger. And so as we're looking at it, I have a box of large rocks, right? And I start putting them in one at a time, filling up that space. And then we look at it and it looks pretty full. But I have some other smaller rocks that I add in. And those rocks kind of fall in between, kind of shake the container a little bit, and they fall in between those large rocks. It looks full, but it's not, because I can take some gravel and pour that in, shake it a little bit, and it looks pretty full, but it's not. Then we can take a pitcher of water and add that. So, what's the moral of the story? Well, it's not that you can just keep adding and filling up your life to the extreme. That's not it at all. But if I had started with the water and then the gravel and then the small rocks, would I even be able to get the big rocks in? Not a chance. And so when we start by putting in the most important things in first, then it allows us to actually get more in and more done because we've put in those things that are top priority. As you're looking at your life, take some time to see what are those big ticket items that really need to get done, that really are the most important. And it doesn't mean that you have to do them first thing in the day, though that's one way you could do it. But it means that you put them in first thing in your schedule, first thing in your routine. They are those foundational pieces that you know that you need to have in your day or your week. I really encourage you to look at your time period in a week's time as opposed to a daily time. But you're looking at it in that week's time or that day's time for things that you do every day. And as they're put in place, it allows you to add in the other things so that the things that are the biggest get your best attention and best energy. And the things that are not as important, that are least important, they'll fit in where they need to. All of this reminds me of a quote by Abraham Lincoln. He said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." When we can put our attention on the things that are the most important, it actually makes everything else better. It makes it easier. It puts us in a place where we're able to do the things that are the most important, that are the highest priority, because we've taken the time to identify how we're spending our time, to acknowledge where our time is going, and to adapt our life and our schedule and even our thought process to focus on what's the most important thing to do. What is our highest priority? I just encourage you that as you think about this, if there's anything that stands out to you in what I've shared today, that you would let me know. I'm really wanting to make sure that the resources and the information that I provide for you are beneficial to you and they meet you where you are. So please reach out to me through my website or respond by just reviewing this podcast and let me know, what do you enjoy and what do you want more of so that I can make it the best for you. Until next time, take care. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode added kindling to your flame, please leave a review and pass it on to a friend who could use some encouragement. You can connect with me and find additional resources at leahlittlebrown.com. Now go forth and burn in all your brilliance.